off now on the Nick line at 1-877-794-1973. That's 1-877-794-1973.
If I'm in this crummy situation, let's make content out of it.
The Matt Schneidman Show is brought to you by Potawatomi Sportsbook. Bet above the rest.
Never go corporate. Always go local.
Now with Doug Russell.
Doug, that's why you need to focus and you do everything that we say.
Here's Matt Schneidman on the game.
I think me and Matt have a much better feel for each other.
It's the Matt Schneidman Show right here on the game, Monday, November 25th. Post 38-10 Packers victory over the 49ers. Doug Russell, you thought
you were done with me.
Said was going to be the personal or the permanent, I should say, second chair. We fired him already. Doug's back.
You just couldn't handle it, man. You just couldn't handle the daily berating of Matt Schneidman. And he bowed out. He tapped out. Said enough. Couldn't handle it. Couldn't do it.
We'll be back later this week.
He'll be back.
2 shows this week, today, tomorrow, then Wednesday's the football feast. Thursday is obviously the Packers game, and then Friday, no show because of the Thanksgiving holiday, even though Thanksgiving is Thursday. But let's
no
get
show
into...
because of Packers, too. They've got an engagement on. Okay, not sure what that was all about. There's some bugs in the system here.
What were you going to say about Friday?
I would say Friday, the Badgers play Minnesota. I've got alarms going off in the studios down the hall. Okay, that took care of that. Yeah, there's just there's some stuff going on right now. But the Packers play on Thursday night too. We won't have a show because of Thanksgiving. Also because the Packers they are also otherwise engaged.
Yeah. Okay, so let's break down Packers 49ers and then start looking ahead earlier than we normally do to Packers Dolphins. I got a bunch of research for you on that I spent all day on. All right, the most impressive thing to me from the Packers 38-10 win over the 49ers, and look, they should have done what they did. They were supposed to. They had to. It was a depleted 49ers team, not only without Brock Purdy, but without Nick Bosa, one of the best pass rushers in the NFL, without Trent Williams, a future Hall of Fame left tackle, without Charvarius Ward, without Diamondor Lenore for most of the game. I think he got injured early. So they were really depleted. So 38-10 win, you can say, yeah, it doesn't tell us much about the Packers, but they did what they had to do. And that's all you can ask for them to do. To me, the most impressive thing was Josh Jacobs. And not for the reason you think, maybe. Not for the 3 touchdowns. Not necessarily for the number of yards that he ran for, 106. He only had 4.1 yards per carry. But when you look at that, you got to realize that, couple touchdowns were 1-yard runs. That obviously doesn't reflect well on the yards per carry, but that accounted for 18 points. The most impressive stat to me about Josh Jacobs' day yesterday was that, according to Next Gen Stats, he forced 15 missed tackles, which is the most for any ball carrier in a single game this season. And entering Sunday Night Football last night, I'm not sure the updated Next Gen Stats numbers after Saquon Barkley went off, but Josh Jacobs ranked tied for second in the NFL in missed tackles forced. Josh Jacobs has been everything the Packers wanted when they signed him to a 4-year, $48 million deal on the same day they released Aaron Jones. People thought, myself included, Aaron Jones probably has a good year left. And I think they wanted a guy who was more durable than Aaron Jones, but Josh Jacobs had missed some time because of injury too. Now, 11 games in, Josh Jacobs hasn't missed a game. He's missed a couple plays because of injury, but he hasn't missed a game. He's 3rd in the NFL in rushing yards. He's 4th in yards after contact per rush. And get this, Doug. Josh Jacobs, let me preface it by saying this. Aaron Jones will be a future Packers Hall of Famer. First ballot.
Without a doubt.
4 years after whenever he retires. One of the best running backs, if not the best in Packers history. Probably not the best, one of the best. One of the top 3. He is a stud. But just for thinking purposes, let me offer you this stat. In 11 games with the Green Bay Packers, Josh Jacobs has 3 games where he's rushed 25 or more times. Aaron Jones, you know how many of those games he had in 102 career games with the Packers where he carried 25 or more times?
No, I don't.
Just 1.
Just really?
One game in 102 where he ran 25 or more times. Now, there
Wow.
were some games where he had 25 or more touches with catches mixed in, but only one game where he ran 25 or more times, carries, handoffs. Josh Jacobs, 3 games already in his first 11. He's just more of a workhorse back. Aaron Jones was a stud, feature back, one of the best, most underrated running backs in the NFL. But Josh Jacobs is built for that pounding more so than Aaron Jones is, I think. We'll see if he can hold up throughout the whole season, but I think the early returns, Doug, on Josh Jacobs have been exemplary.
Well, that's putting it mildly. Josh Jacobs has been incredible for the Packers. Josh Jacobs has been everything that you had hoped that he was going to be. He carries the rock 27 times. He's carried the rock 32 times earlier this season, 3 touchdowns yesterday. But he's also been somebody who at every turn talks about how much he wanted to be here, how much he talked about it after the game in the locker room as well. I never regretted my decision to come to Green Bay. It's all about winning. Xavier McKinney talked about that as well because, it's obviously colder in Green Bay than it is in Tuscaloosa, but Green Bay and Tuscaloosa, for some of those guys that went to Alabama, those 2 guys specifically who were teammates under Nick Saban back in the day, there's so much that reminds them of it's all about ball when they go to Green Bay as opposed to when they went to Tuscaloosa. When you go to Tuscaloosa, it's all about ball. When you go to Green Bay, it's all about ball. And both of those guys, McKinney from New York and Jacobs from Las Vegas, and before that, the San Francisco Bay Area, but Oakland, but you know what I mean. Bigger cities, huge cities, bright lights, big city, lots to do, a million things to do. No, they came to Green Bay because it's all about ball. And both of them are flourishing here, just like they did in college.
Let's keep in mind, and I think winning and all that had to do with it, but I take it with a grain of salt every time one of these players says, the reason I came to Green Bay was because of winning. And Josh Jacobs said yesterday, I'm sure it's partially true, when he said, I wanted to be part of the winning culture. It's also because they're paying you $12 million a year. And Xavier McKinney came here because the Packers paid him a $67 million contract. But I think the winning has made it easier to make that decision to come here. And they only made the playoffs once, each of them, in their first couple of years in the league. McKinney 4 years, Jacobs 5 years. Malik Heath said yesterday that Josh Jacobs has that winner spirit. He's always been a winner from Bama. He had it in him. Malik Heath knows that from his days at Ole Miss. But he just wasn't really able to, translate that into team winning because he's only one player. But the thing with Green Bay is they have winners all around these guys. So the brilliance of Josh Jacobs and Xavier McKinney is matched by the brilliance around them. Still 3rd place in the division, 8-3. That's insane.
That's tough.
10-1 Lions, 9-2 Vikings, 8-3 Packers. Still 6 games left, so you have some ground to make up. Probably looking at a wild card spot, but division is not mathematically impossible yet. But Josh Jacobs, Xavier McKinney, and I think we have some sound from Jordan Love just talking about what both of those guys have meant. McKinney said it yesterday. We're cut from the same cloth. That day, March 14th, when the Packers signed both of them, one of the most successful days in recent franchise history, especially if they go on to win a Super Bowl this year. March 14th will be a big reason why. McKinney got his 7th interception yesterday, now tied for the league lead again with Kirby Joseph of the Lions. Jacobs, 3 touchdowns. McKinney with a 4th down pass breakup. I'm not sure 2 free agent signings can work out as well as these 2 have.
It's been huge. I mean, those are 2 guys who've been pivotal playmakers for us. And, just talking about Josh, the offensive end to, get a running back like that who's just so explosive and just also the leadership aspect that he brings to this team is huge. And then Xavier McKinney on the back end. The plays he makes, the turnovers he generates, those are 2 very impactful players for us.
That's coming from a guy who is nicknamed 220. Malik Heath said that in the locker room yesterday. I never heard that before.
I never heard that one either.
Players nicknamed Jordan Love 220. And
you sign the or you sign the contract, you got to wear the crown.
Well, I'm glad you got what it stands for because we were in our office writing after the game yesterday, and Rob Domofsky goes, "What does 220 mean?"
Oh,
it's because he signed a 4-year, $220 million contract.
Rob's smarter than that.
I know. It was after the game. It was late at night. And we were busy. The neurons weren't firing on all cylinders.
Gotcha.
But yeah, I think the story coming out of yesterday's game, the primary story, and we'll get to more subplots from the game, was that Xavier McKinney and Josh Jacobs continue to be the best players for this team on both sides of the ball. And they just so happen to be the two free agent signings from the same college, from similar backgrounds in terms of playing for teams that didn't have much success during their times there. And now they are surrounded by guys who share the same, not desire for winning, because I'm sure everyone or most people want to win in the NFL, but same skill level. They're surrounded by a lot better skill. A couple other things I want to touch on from the game. Yesterday was a day for defensive players who haven't made many plays this season. 3 of them I want to highlight: Lucas Van Ness, Keyshawn Nixon, and Quay Walker. Quay Walker and Keyshawn Nixon, and Van Ness for that matter, those 3 guys have been the subject of much ire, if that's the right word, from Packers Twitter this year because of A, their draft slot, or B, how much they're being paid or how much they play, not matching their production. And Quay Walker, a 2022 first-round pick, Van Ness, a 2023 first-round pick. We heard from Jeff Hafley this week that play where Quay Walker kind of has a free run at Caleb Williams, then pulls up and kind of just plays zone defense. Hafley said Quay should have kept going. He kind of just hesitated. That's one he wants to have back. Well, we saw Quay on the first drive burst through the A-gap on a simulated pressure and pressure Brandon Allen right into a Rashawn Gary strip sack that Brandon Allen recovered, but I believe it was on 3rd down, so it forced a punt. Quay was just more decisive, quicker, had some really good tackles. TFL McCaffrey, a pressure into a throwaway. Dropped an interception, which he's got to corral. That's not the first time that's happened to Quay in his career, but I thought overall a good game from him. Then Van Ness, obviously, the forced fumble that Kenny Clark recovered that turned into 7 points. He got past Dominic Pooney, the pulling right guard, throws Christian McCaffrey out of the club, knocks the ball loose on Brandon Allen, who had just slipped. And then Keyshawn Nixon, I tweeted the clip of his play earlier today. Watch where he starts on that play, outside the near side numbers. And we've talked before on this show about, excuse me, I had a dry throat. Anthony Campanelli, the Packers linebacker coach, who made up the Bible verse, can't be 316, God loves those who run to the football. Nixon recited that unprompted again yesterday after the game because he covered almost the entire width of the field to punch that one out on Christian McCaffrey after the 49ers hit McCaffrey on a screenplay. That's just hustle. That's just wanting it more. And it's great technique once you get there. So those 3 guys, I think, deserve their flowers because they haven't been productive enough this season. They were yesterday. And Keyshawn Nixon, he's self-aware. He said it. He goes, I haven't made a play since like week 4. Finally, damn, is what he said. They're going to need a lot more from those 3 guys as the season winds down here.
Yeah, I think they're all self-aware. I mean, every time an athlete says, well, I don't pay attention to what is being said about me, I think it's nonsense. Some pay more attention than others. Coaches pay probably the most attention, but they'll never admit it. But yeah, I mean, it was good to see some of those guys, really start to flourish. I think that Quay Walker's been taking more strays than just about anybody of those 3. I mean, Lucas Van Ness in his 2nd season. Yeah, I think we all kind of talked about how this is going to be the year that he really takes that big, big leap from year 1 to year 2. You're in the type of defense that is more attuned to what his game is more centered around. That was the narrative going. I know how you feel about narratives, but that was the narrative going into the season. Yeah, I mean, it's going to be critical. I mean, because every game is critical, as we've seen, because this division is what it is. I mean, Wes Hodkiewicz came up with the statistic. I've mentioned it a couple of times today, but I think it bears repeating. The Packers are the first 8-3, 3rd place or worse team this deep into the season since the 1970 merger. That's how good this division is right now. In Minnesota, they stole one from Chicago. They tried to give it away. God knows they tried to give it away. They didn't. But just a couple of wild finishes in the NFL on Sunday. But yeah, I mean, it was Detroit. They just kind of ho-hum their way to wins now. I don't think they were great against Indianapolis, but they are dominating everyone that they play right now. They won a game by, almost 3 touchdowns and didn't have their best game yesterday. So yeah, it's going to be critical, not only for the Packers to continue to win games, but also the way that they're winning. A couple of things that I pulled out of it. We've talked about red zone efficiency. They were 5 for 5. They dominated time of possession. 5 penalties for 40 yards. You can live with 5 penalties for 40 yards.
You can.
They didn't fumble the ball while the 49ers fumbled it 5 times, lost 2 of them. 3rd down efficiency, 6 for 13. So just a tick under 50%. You can live with that too. That's pretty good. So all of those, and I know that Nick Bosa wasn't playing, and I know that Brock Purdy wasn't playing. They've had some injuries. They've had injuries all year long. George Kittle's first game back since he missed a game. Christian McCaffrey was out for a while, but he's been back for a couple of weeks now. He wasn't necessarily effective. They bottled him up pretty well. And they've got other injuries that they're dealing with as well. This was a game that the Packers had to win. They had to dominate because of how banged up San Francisco was and how kind of poorly their season has gone in no small measure because of all the injuries that they've had. And they did that. They did everything that you could have asked them to do from a fundamental standpoint, as well as from a scoreboard standpoint. This was a complete win for them, and I think they needed one.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe most remarkable out of anything is that they attempted their first 50-yard field goal of the season yesterday.
And made it!
And Brandon McManus made it. They got a kicker now. I believe he's 7 for 8. That's the stat Mike Heller gave me. I haven't double-checked that, but I trust him.
Yeah, we all trust Mike Heller. He doesn't just make stuff up.
Yeah.
That's what we like about Mike Heller.
So just an all-around good game from the Packers. And, you know, the phrase complimentary football gets thrown around a lot, and for good reason. All 3 turnovers they forced, Packers turned it into 7 points. That's huge.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like you said, red zone 5 for 5. They were 29th in the NFL in red zone touchdown percentage entering that Bears game. They're 8 for their last 10 scoring touchdowns in the red zone. That's 80% for math geniuses out there. And guess what? Back when they ranked number 1 in the NFL in 2020 in red zone touchdown percentage, they were 80%. And Sean Ryan even said after the game last night, they still call it the gold zone. Still.
Okay.
Enough.
Yeah. I mean, you know, Hackett's been gone for a while. That was a Nathaniel Hackett thing, wasn't it?
Yeah. He
Gold zone?
created it.
That's what I thought.
But the spirit of Nathaniel Hackett lives on in Green Bay, Wisconsin.
Well, probably
He's
lives
still
on in Green Bay.
alive,
It probably lives on in
Jets are
Green Bay
dead.
more than it does in a couple of other places.
Right, exactly. Doug, I thought it was interesting. You know, Xavier McKinney said yesterday that their defensive game plan didn't change facing Brandon Allen instead of Brock Purdy. You know, I didn't think Brandon Allen played terribly. He looked like a backup quarterback, sure.
Yeah.
But I don't think he was just some bum who didn't belong on the field. That back shoulder throw he made to George Kittle down the seam with Xavier McKinney guarding him, that was a nice one. McKinney had a nice smirk talking about George Kittle after the game, talking about how he got him on that one explosive. But, you know, I know you talked to Evan Williams a little bit about their preparation for Brandon Allen, what they saw from him. Let's hear from the Packers rookie safety, now healthy again after recently dealing with a hamstring injury.
Going into the game, what did you know about Allen, their quarterback?
Not much. Honestly, like we got the news on Saturday or Friday. And so, yeah, I mean, saw that he had a few starts under his belt with that. He was with Cincinnati and then, you know, to the Niners. And honestly, you don't know too much of what the game plan is going to look like, right? Because just because they're trying to, you know, establish a whole new, you know, offensive scheme around your one quarterback. And so once another quarterback comes in, it's kind of, you got to do a couple things to change it up, make it a little easier on them. Yeah, we anticipated they were going to, you know, rely on the run a little more. Probably just try to get the ball out of his hands quick, whatever that be, screens or quick game. And yeah, got a little bit of that at the start. And then I feel like our defense really just settled in, you know, got our cleats in the ground and yeah, did a good job of hunting that ball.
Did he give you any surprises from what you were able to scout from him going into the game?
Not too much. Honestly, he pushed the ball downfield a little more than what I thought. You know, he took some shots on our defense, which was, yeah, just a little. Probably wasn't expecting that, I guess, just personally. But no, we're expecting them, you know, to rely on the run, which they did at the start of the game and, you know, throughout the game. But we were able to get a lead and then, you know, force them to be one-dimensional is when, you know, our pass rushers can eat and, you know, our secondary is, yeah, licking our chops, you know, ready to make a play.
Have you ever played 2 games in 4 days?
I have not. I have definitely not, but I'm looking forward to that challenge. I feel like we're primed for just this culture, this organization. I feel like we're primed for, you know, just looking to the next game and, you know, just, you know, being able to pivot, being able to adjust and just make those changes and say, hey, all right, we're going to put our cleats in the ground and hang with the best of them. So definitely ready for that challenge and got a good team coming in here on Thursday. So we're going to have to be ready.
How much does it help that they're both here at Lambeau?
A lot. Definitely. You know, the home crowd is something like I've never experienced before. And yeah, I mean, it gives us all the momentum, you know, when you got 78,000, I think it was today.
And you don't have to get on a plane.
Exactly. That helps too. Most definitely, you know, not having to leave on a Wednesday. Yeah, but I mean, playing at home, there's really nothing like it. And yeah, well, we should, you know, do what we're supposed to do heading into this next game.
Yeah, you know, Evan Williams made a good point. They forced the 49ers to be one-dimensional. We talked after the Packers lost to the Vikings, after they lost to the Lions, about maybe abandoning the run too early. Well, they were down 28-0 in one of those games. Then they were down 3 scores, I think, in the early second half against the Lions. You have to abandon the run to make up that deficit with the amount of time you have left. And Matt LaFleur pointed out yesterday how big it was that they got out to that 17-0 lead because they thought, and probably thought correctly, the 49ers wanted to rely on the run and Christian McCaffrey with a backup quarterback in. Well, Packers were up 17-0. 49ers couldn't really afford to do that to make up the deficit. And when they did run Christian McCaffrey, 11 carries for 31 yards, 2.8 yards per carry. So just an all-around solid performance from the Packers. After the break, they got another game in 3 days. So we're going to start diving into the opponent upcoming here on Thanksgiving night. Packers Dolphins at Lambeau Field. The return of Joseph Barry. Former defensive coordinator Joe Barry.
We hardly knew.
Talk to you after the break. Stick with us right here on the Matt Schneidman Show on the Game.
It's a matter of time before we all run out. When I thought he was mine, she caught him by the mouth.
Time now for my final judgment presented by Habush and Rotier. I can't remember, Doug, if I've used this as my final judgment before this season.
I don't know.
And even if I have, this is my final judgment on this topic.
Okay.
The Packers absolutely made the right move in swapping Josh Jacobs for Aaron Jones. That's no disrespect to Aaron Jones.
No, as you
He's
mentioned,
still
first ballot.
First
Packers Hall of
ballot
Fame.
Packers Hall of Famer. Still a really good player in this league. Still effective. But it gave the Packers something different. Josh Jacobs forces missed tackles all over the yard. Grounds and pounds. I said the stat earlier. Josh Jacobs has 3 games in his first 11 with the Packers where he's carried 25 or more times. Aaron Jones had one of those games in 102 games with the Packers. Jacobs just brings a different element.
Mm-hmm.
He brings the speed and elusiveness of Aaron Jones combined with the downhill in your face of A.J. Dillon. And it's more effective than A.J. Dillon because he can really break tackles, not just better than A.J. Dillon and Aaron Jones, but better than most running backs in the NFL. Josh Jacobs is a stud. He's durable. He's more than 3 years younger than Aaron Jones, so he'll be here for, at least 2 years, maybe 3, maybe 4. Really good decision. Questionable at the time. Really good decision in hindsight.
You thought it was
Brian
questionable at the
Gutekunst.
time?
I just thought it was questionable because it was clear Aaron Jones was still really good when healthy.
Mm-hmm.
And if they could get him healthy with everything he meant to the franchise, I thought, okay, we'll see how this works out. Jacobs hadn't stayed completely healthy, last season either. So I just thought it was questionable because of what Jones still had in the tank, how much he had meant to the franchise. But now I look back and say they absolutely made the right decision.
I never questioned it, and I really like Aaron Jones a lot. I've told the story how my wife also went to UTEP, played tennis there, so they know a lot of the same people. They, at Aaron's charity event a couple of years ago, they really bonded over some of the people that they collectively knew together. They had a really good time. I've got, nothing but great feelings about Aaron Jones on the field and off. Great human being. There's a little bit of former Packers crime yesterday when Jonathan Owens stripped him yesterday at the goal line, causing him to fumble, but that neither here nor there. You hate to see him in.
Josh Jacobs also hasn't fumbled since week 2.
Yeah. And Aaron sometimes fumbles. He's had some fumbles in some big spots. I never questioned it for a couple of reasons. Josh Jacobs is 4 years younger. You mentioned the injuries, but Aaron missed more than half the season in 2023. Love the guy. Like you mentioned, without question, first ballot Packers Hall of Famer, a Hall of Fame human being. I never questioned it. I mean, football is a brutal business and it is cutthroat and it is about winning. And Aaron Jones still is a playmaker when he's healthy, when he's out there. But when hamstrings start to pop and you've got, various injuries and you've got the fumbling issues that he's had from time to time, I never questioned it. Josh Jacobs is just somebody who you've seen over the last several years, and you covered him very early in his career. And I just seen him getting better and better and better, except for last year. Maybe that's why he was out on the market where he was and why the Packers were able to get him. But I just thought that it was a significant and immediate upgrade. When it happened, I hope that they were able to work out some accord with Aaron Jones to bring him back for this coming season. Didn't happen. You wish him well. He's on a 1-year deal with the Vikings. I'm not sure what a 31-year-old running back is going to garner on the open market after this season. But it's just one of those things that I'm not saying I was right and everybody else who questioned. No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying it's like that just seems so clear cut to me.
Mm-hmm. Without a doubt. What's your final judgment, Doug?
This was the cleanest game the Packers have played all year long. And they've had some really good games, but
clean does not necessarily mean fewest penalties.
Correct.
Okay.
Clean was, the one, I wouldn't even call it an interception. It was a free play and it was a bad pass, but it was on a free play and Jordan Love knew that it was on a free play. So whatever, not even concerned about that. I know that he's had obviously the turnover issues that we've talked about a lot on this show and others. I just thought that the way that they went out there, they asserted themselves early. Yes, it was against a depleted team. I will grant you that. The 49ers are a shadow of what they were a year ago when they won the NFC Championship, when they beat the Packers in the playoffs, when they beat the Lions in the playoffs in that comeback. I acknowledge all of that. That having been said, you get out to a 17-0 lead, you assert your will, you make their backup quarterback try to win the game with his arm. And Brandon Allen's been in the league for a while. He's been in the league for about a decade or so. And so he's bounced around from team to team, hasn't had a lot of starts, but he has had some experience in the NFL. So it's not like, they just picked up some guy, at Austin Straubel Airport who was waiting for his bag. That's not what happened with Brandon Allen. I don't want to make him more than what he is, but I just thought that this was just a really clean game. The Packers dominated from start to finish. And if they continue to play this way for the rest of the season, I really like their chances. Detroit is worlds above everybody else right now, it seems, in the NFC. But if you catch them on the wrong day, anything can happen when January rolls around.
Okay, so we got the Packers played their cleanest game of the season, and we got the Packers absolutely made the right decision in swapping Aaron Jones for Josh Jacobs. Those, as always, are our final judgments presented by Habush and Rotier. National reputation, hometown service. Go to habush.com. Okay, let's get into this Dolphins matchup. Dolphins are 5-6. But look deeper into that record as I pull out my notepad here with all my stats written down on it. Tua Tagovailoa missed 6 weeks. I think the bye week was mixed in there, but he was off for 6 weeks because of that gnarly concussion he suffered early in the season. Only played 2 games to start the season. Since Tua returned, and he's played 5 games since his return, Dolphins are 3-2. They were 2-6. Now they're 5-6. They've won the last 3. In the last 5 games, Tua has thrown 11 touchdowns, 1 interception. In the last 2 games against the Raiders and Patriots, I understand, not the stiffest of competition, Dolphins have outscored those teams 68-34, 7 touchdowns, 0 interceptions for Tagovailoa. You know who ranks first in the NFL in EPA per dropback among quarterbacks since week 8? Tua Tagovailoa. Now, the caveat here, Pro Football Talk had an interesting stat. Tua Tagovailoa is 0-7 in his career. Quarterback wins are not a stat, but teams, I'll put it like this, teams quarterbacked by Tagovailoa are 0-7 when the temperature is 40 degrees or lower during a game. We all saw what happened in those absurd temperatures in Kansas City during the playoffs last year.
Mm-hmm.
It's supposed to be around 20 on Thursday night here in Green Bay. Tua, in his post-game press conference yesterday after wiping out the Patriots, said, "I'm excited to kill narratives, so let's go. Bring it on."
Feels about narratives the same way you do, apparently.
8th time's a charm, Doug, for Tua in the cold?
Sure.
Maybe not.
Maybe.
Last time these two teams played was on Christmas in 2022. He was very clearly concussed in the fourth quarter. I believe he threw 3 interceptions in the fourth quarter, one to Jair Alexander, where we got that legendary post-game interview with him and Pam Oliver, one to Rasul Douglas, if I remember correctly, and one to Devondre Campbell? No, Devondre Campbell had the pick 6 against the Commanders that year. I forget who the third one was to.
Already your memory's
Anyway.
better than mine, so.
Anyway, Packers are going to be challenged. This Dolphins offense is pretty good with Tua healthy. Jalen Waddle, Devon Achane, the second-year running back out of Texas A&M, Tyreek Hill, of course. Here's an interesting stat, too. Then I'll hand it over to you, Doug. Tua Tagovailoa has the lowest average intended air yards per target, meaning, in layman's terms, he doesn't take shots down the field on average. 5.5 yards is the average distance Tua throws the ball in the air on his passes. He gets it to these speedsters. They try to make guys miss. And that's how the Dolphins passing game is built. I would expect them to do the same. Take whatever Jeff Hafley and his defense gives them. Try it for Jonnu Smith, who's been a touchdown machine in recent weeks. Jalen Waddle, Tyreek Hill, Devon Achane, make these guys miss and get yards after the catch. It's kind of what Caleb Williams did, and it worked. So I'm interested to see what the Packers' defensive game plan is going to be.
Yeah, every year it seems as though the Dolphins have that touchdown machine. Last year was Raheem Mostert, who had, I think, 25 or 21 combined touchdowns, which is just absurd when you think about it.
Packers fans still have PTSD from that name from the 2019 NFC Championship game.
That is true. Just he's wearing a different shirt now. But with Tua, after he had his latest concussion, there were fans that were calling for him to retire just because he had his brain scrambled so many times. And listen, concussions are nothing to mess around with. They aren't. We've seen the effects of it over the course of the last 30 years in the NFL. But he's been incredible since he came back. This is a team that's won 3 games in a row. They've got a coach who believes in their players. They've got really good skill position players. They're riding a heater right now, and don't sleep on Miami. You look at the record, and it's oftentimes it's when you play a team as opposed to what team you're playing. And if you would have gotten the Dolphins when Tua was out, you probably would just say, all right, just roll out the helmets and roll out the balls and let's rack up a dub. And I think that there may be some of that with the 49ers when you look back at that game because they were all banged up and they were all injured. Well, the Dolphins are coming in at or near at this point of the season as close as you can get to full strength. And like you said, anytime you got Tyreek Hill and you can get him the football, look out. Tua's riding a heater right now as well as his entire team is. And they've got a head coach in Mike McDaniel that, yes, Matt LaFleur knows very well. So maybe he knows some of the tendencies. I don't know. But it's going to be a challenge for the Packers. There's no question that this is not a game that you can kind of sleep on that 5-6 record and just say that, you're going to go out and just get an automatic win. The Packers are playing well right now. They've won 6 out of their last 7. They haven't all been pretty wins, but Sunday's win against the 49ers, that was a pretty win. So I like Green Bay's chances, but Dolphins are a good team. They are a really good team.
They absolutely are. And after this break, we're going to touch on the other side of the ball for the Dolphins. How should the Packers offense attack this Miami defense that ranks top 10 in the NFL in both passing yards allowed per game and rushing yards allowed per game? And Joe Barry, Dolphins run game coordinator on defense, has that unit playing pretty well. Is it a Joe Barry revenge game on Thursday in Green Bay? We'll float that possibility out there. It's the Matt Schneidman Show right here on The Game.
Some nights when I'm hollow. I know you could You're insecure.
Is your holiday shopping done yet? Mine hasn't even started. So I'll probably go to Iron Jock. Iron Jock's got you. Now through Cyber Monday, December 2nd, enjoy 40% off Iron Jock's entire line with promo code HOLIDAY40. HOLIDAY40. 40% off everything except for clearance items and gift cards. So if you're stuck on what to get someone, give the gift of Iron Jock. Go to ironjock.com for details. That's ironjoc.com for 40% off now through December 2nd. Doug, I said it before the break. Joe Barry, obviously the Packers defensive coordinator the last 3 seasons. He is now the linebackers coach and defensive run game coordinator for the Miami Dolphins. Miami Dolphins, 8th in rushing yards allowed per game. They're also tied for 6th in passing yards allowed per game. They're 12th in scoring defense, 14th in pressure rate, 26th in sack rate. They got some names on that defense. Jalen Ramsey, Jordan Brooks, who the Packers were interested in the 2020 draft, the pick after Jordan Love he was. And when Brian Gutekunst in the pre-draft process went down to Texas Tech to talk to Matt Wells, who was then the head coach at Texas Tech, I believe, formerly the head coach at Utah State when Jordan Love played there. He also was going to look at Jordan Brooks, the linebacker who played for Texas Tech and then was drafted by the Seahawks with the 27th overall pick of the 2020 draft. He has played the most defensive snaps for the Dolphins this season. They also have Jordan Poyer and Javon Holland on the back end, a solid safety duo, and Zach Sealer and Calais Campbell, their 2 defensive tackles, tied for the team lead with 4 sacks each. This is a solid team.
Mm-hmm.
You know, seeing these teams around the league, the 49ers, the Dolphins, when Tua got hurt, kind of just crumble when they lose their starting quarterback. It just makes what the Packers did with Malik Willis that much more impressive because they didn't crumble. They flourished. They played well in the 2.5 games Malik Willis had to play, won all 3 of those games against the AFC South, minus the Texans. They won that game too. Jordan Love obviously played that entire game. The Dolphins are a different team with Tua as their quarterback, and they're not going to be an easy out on Thursday at Lambeau Field.
No, they're not. And, you know, just as an aside, I wonder, we kind of kicked it around at some point, wonder if Malik Willis is going to wind up playing for somebody else next year as a starting quarterback. I don't know. You look back at what the Packers were able to do with their backup quarterback, may have saved their season because we've seen how good the NFC North is. And most teams do struggle, obviously, without their starting quarterback. As you mentioned, we saw it with the 49ers, saw it earlier this season with the Dolphins as well. I mean, that's tough to overcome. But, yeah, they've got some names. I mean, a couple of guys that have been around the block a few times. You mentioned Calais Campbell. He's been around the block a few times. Jalen Ramsey's been around the block a few times. But, you know, these guys are still getting it done in the National Football League. And that's a testament to their excellence, but it's also a testament to the fact that, you know, Miami is a place that I know their fans are really hungry for a win. I know Stephen Ross, their owner, has dumped millions upon millions into the facilities there. They're thought of as one of the best places for players to go, not just because of the weather, but because of also the facilities. You know, every year we've talked about it a couple of times, how the Players Association has this survey that they send all the players, and the same 2 teams are at the top. I mean, same 3 teams, I suppose. It's always in the last couple of years, the Vikings in their new facility, the Dolphins in their new facility, and the Packers. And, you know, it's there's a reason why. But also, all 3 of those teams are still looking for their most recent Super Bowl championship. And I don't think that Miami's going to get there this year. But, yeah, they're a good team. But they did struggle without Tua, and that's why their record is what it is.
Yeah, absolutely. And we mentioned earlier, if you're just joining us, Pro Football Talk had an interesting stat. Quarterbacks, or I should say teams quarterbacked by Tua Tagovailoa, 0-7 in 40-degree weather or lower. It's supposed to be around 20 degrees Fahrenheit on Thursday at Lambeau Field. I'm making my pick right now because I already did on the Brick and the Stick earlier today with John Kuhn, out now wherever you get your podcast. We recorded a day early because we normally record on Tuesday. Packers' only day of availability for media is Tuesday. All 3 coordinators will talk. Matt LaFleur will talk. Locker room will be open. I don't know if there's practice viewing. I think they're just doing walkthroughs this week. So I'm not sure that there's practice viewing. There will just be injury report estimations. Yeah, just players available in locker room at 11:10. then LaFleur at 320, Bisaccia, Hafley, Stenavich after that. So no practice viewing this week. All practice reports, or injury reports, I should say, will be estimation. So keep an eye out for that. But I am going Packers 24, Dolphins 20.
Okay, close game.
I think the Packers are -3, so they cover again. But I think it's going to be closer than the 49ers game. I think the Dolphins are a different team with Tua. I don't think he completely bucks the trend of the Dolphins under him not playing well in cold, but I think the Packers squeak out with a win. These are the games. Kenny Clark mentioned it after the game yesterday that the Packers really enjoy having a guy like Josh Jacobs. November, December, cold, wears you down as the game goes on, sucks the life out of a defense. I'm intrigued to see how much work the Packers give him. He had 26 carries yesterday. He said post-game that if need be, he'd figure out a way to get 26 more.
Yeah,
on Thursday. I don't know if they're going to ask him to do that, but he's ready.
As the game wore on, if there was one thing, there's not much to pick on. There's almost nothing to pick on. I was a little bit surprised that they kept feeding him the ball because of the schedule, because the fact that, in 4 days, they do have to play a good team back at Lambeau Field. But Josh Jacobs, as you mentioned, 26 carries, the 3 touchdowns, 106 yards. Emmanuel Wilson ran the ball effectively. Chris Brooks has been very good for this team. They've got some depth in that room, as you and I have talked about.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a little bit surprised that they didn't go a little bit earlier to some of that depth and give Wilson and Brooks a couple of more carries, as in several more carries. Yeah, I mean,
just in terms of planning ahead for
yeah, but the game was in hand. The game was over. And that's certainly not a knock. It's not a knock on anybody. Maybe if anything, it's a compliment to Wilson and Brooks with how good they've been. But the game was over, and you've got the Miami Dolphins coming up. As we've talked about ad nauseum, every game is critical. Even an AFC opponent coming into Lambeau on Thursday is critical. And I know it's a short week for both the Dolphins and the Packers, but I thought they would just keep a little bit more powder on their feature back when the game was out of hand. My opinion.
A little bit. I haven't heard that one.
Yeah, save a little powder.
Okay. Yeah, I don't expect him to carry 26 times. I said 19, 20. John Kuhn didn't like that I said that. He said you play to win the games a la Herm Edwards, and you should feed Josh Jacobs as much as you need to. I will say Emmanuel Wilson, let me look up his season numbers because it seems like he's always pretty efficient when he gets in there. I know he doesn't offer the same, pass protection as maybe Chris Brooks does, but Emmanuel Wilson's a pretty solid runner. Okay, so he's had 66 carries this year for 312 yards. That's 4.7 yards per carry. That's pretty solid. Receiving, he has 9 catches for 46 yards. That's 5.1 yards per reception. Not great, but he's a serviceable number 2. Mm-hmm. And if you need to go to him, I think he can take a couple drives. But Josh Jacobs is your workhorse. Mm-hmm. These next couple games are why you spend that much money on him. How many times did we talk about A.J. Dillon wearing teams down this time of year? Now it's your feature back who can do that, and he can handle that workload and do everything else that a feature back can do that A.J. Dillon maybe needed Aaron Jones to do in those situations. So I think we see a lot of Josh Jacobs again. Matt LaFleur tries to humiliate his good friend Joe Barry. No, he's not going to. I don't think there's any ill will there, but
maybe there was a little bit, maybe there's still a little soreness between he and Shanahan.
I don't know. I mean, I was surprised LaFleur not only went for it on the 4th and 1 or 4th and 2 with about 5.5 minutes left. They're up 21. Uh-huh. But then I was surprised he went for it on 4th down with Malik Willis in garbage time instead of going for a 48-yard field goal with Brandon McManus just to get an extra rep in for McManus in those conditions. And they didn't get the 4th down that time.
Michael Silver was doing a book tour. He wrote a book recently detailing the Sean McVay coaching tree and the Shanahan coaching tree. And I had him on Packers game day, I don't know, about a month and a half ago or so. And he is insistent that there is still beef between LaFleur and Kyle Shanahan. So I don't know if that played into it. That's the source, Michael Silver, not Matt LaFleur. But that's what the narrative, again, we've used that word a million times tonight. That's what's being pushed right now.
Because of the 49ers trying to get Aaron Rodgers?
Yeah.
Well, I can understand that.
So just reading between the lines there, maybe there's still something there. I don't know that there's a Mike McDaniel because they were on that coaching staff in Washington together as well. So that coaching tree is something else. There's head coaches everywhere.
This has been said before, but when the Dolphins played the Packers 2 years ago, there was that story that Mike McDaniel told Kevin Clark about how Matt LaFleur basically vouched for him and maybe saved his job with the Texans when McDaniel slept through a couple meetings and LaFleur vouched for him, and he wouldn't be a head coach today if it wasn't for LaFleur. So those two get along well as well. We'll see how icy that handshake is after Thursday's game. I know there was one a couple years ago between LaFleur and Shanahan that was a little bit icy.
Yeah, I didn't catch yesterday's. I didn't catch the one after the game.
No, I did not see the one yesterday.
It'd be interesting to go back and see what how that all went down.
Football feast this week in Ashwaubenon. I will finally be able to go in person. The one right across from Lambeau Field. Hope to see everybody there.
You could walk there from your office.
I could, but my office is at my house.
Well, I mean the Lambeau Field office, which is right next to
but
our
I won't be in
office.
the Lambeau Field office since there's no availability.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense. I knew that.
So, hope to see everybody there. I will be there. Drew will be there. KB will be there. Hunter will be there, hopefully. Wayne Larrivee might be there. So
if Hunter can't make it, we'll probably send Luddy.
Okay.
That's my guess.
Fantastic.
So we'll figure it out.
Well, appreciate everyone for listening. We're on a short week again. Tomorrow night, we'll talk to Wayne Larrivee during our normal Tuesday segment. And then we'll get you ready for Packers Dolphins Thursday night, Thanksgiving night. Take your nap during the Giants-Cowboys game. Nobody wants to watch Cooper Rush and Tommy DeVito. Get ready for Packers Dolphins on Thursday night. The first of 5 consecutive, potentially, primetime games for the Packers. Primetime Packers coming up. He's Doug Russell. I'm Matt Schneidman. This has been the Matt Schneidman Show. We'll talk to you tomorrow.